Hi everyone, I'm Siobhan McDonald from Granger Street Studios. Thanks for coming today. Let's get started with our program. The magic in looking at miniature art is when we get to reimagine the world on an entirely different scale, one in which even Thumbelina might be considered a giant. Miniature art delights the eye and teases the brain with possibility. Thank you for joining me for this look at some of the history of miniature art. How lucky are we that Right at Home Boston North continues to sponsor us to make this program possible? They are truly partners in caring. We really appreciate all of their advocacy and community work, along with their work in homes and other settings, helping our loved ones to stay safe and have the best quality of life possible. And Age Span, who hosts this program and makes sure it gets delivered to you. They're celebrating 50 years of connecting people of all ages with information and services to lead their best lives. The term miniature is applied to any work of art produced in a size much smaller than the normal size for that type of work. So this could include paintings, engravings, and sculptures that are very small. It has a long history that dates back to prehistory. This little horse-shaped brooch on the left comes to us from the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. It was made in Central Europe by Celtic culture from around 600 BCE and measures less than 2 inches across. During this time, it was rare to be able to own and care for a horse, so wearing this could have been a symbol of power and prestige. And you can see some other examples of miniature art on the slide to your right. All over the Greek world, geometric bronze horse miniature statues, such as this one, have been found at sanctuaries in great quantities, where they were deposited as votive offerings to the gods. Though other animals, and more rarely humans, were also represented, horses outnumber all other types of solid cast statuettes. Ownership of horses, like we said, was a status symbol for aristocrats who used these animals in warfare and in the competitive sphere of horse and chariot races. But why did people make and continue to make miniature art? One reason might be that working on a small scale can give the creator a sense of control over their environment. Philosopher Levi Strauss believed that people feel satisfaction from miniatures because they can see and understand them in their entirety, which can be common in a chaotic world. And on the bottom, you are looking at an artist who makes miniature set designs for movies. And I love this quote of him. The wise man doesn't give the right answers, he poses the right questions. Holding a miniature in one's hands can be a fulfilling experience. Miniatures can also be symbolic stand-ins for items in life that people want but can't always get, such as a boat or car figurines. In Maryland, Jorge Flores has collected 16 rooms of models. He has very strict criteria for what makes the cut. The piece has to be handmade and meet his standards of creativity and workmanship. Most importantly, it has to bring a smile to his face. Gosh, I would love to go visit his collection. Artistry and spirituality can be connected. Insights gathered from artists reveal that religious inspiration is often a critical driver in the pursuit and creation of miniature painting. The artists are not just creating art in the material sense, they are engaging in a form of spiritual devotion. Their meticulous techniques and the use of traditional materials are acts of reverence that elevate their creations beyond mere beauty. Here we're looking at a Russian artist whose last name is Baranov, who is also a very good goldsmith, by the way. And oh my gosh, so this piece on the right is smaller than his thumbnail. Absolutely incredible. Now, in the 16th century, artists created the boxwood prayer beads and other small sculptures, things that you're seeing here, but miniaturized their scale to create this intimate experience for religious devotees, usually royalty or other wealthy patrons. I can only imagine that their first response when they opened this up must have been just absolute wonder and awe, and then a desire to understand how was this made. This rosary bead comes to us from the Netherlands. It's about 2.5 inches high when it's closed, but look at that detail when it's opened up. Incredible. Some of the earliest known miniatures were created over 5,000 years ago to be placed in Egyptian tombs. The ancient Egyptians believed these miniatures would be brought to life to join the deceased in the afterlife. They are among the most abundant artifacts of ancient Egypt. Now, this work is about 6 inches tall by 3 inches wide, but despite that, we can see the incredible detail and precision. Artists would often use brushes with a single bristle to capture fine details, such as the patterns on clothing or the feathers of a bird. And as you can see here, this piece, which is called A Prince Holding a Falcon, and dates back to 1680, sold for $329,000 at an auction, which seems like a lot for a work of art that's about 6 inches high. This Mogul carved ivory hilted dagger with a ram's head sold for $20,000 at an auction. And although we typically wouldn't include this in a discussion about miniatures, I thought that this ram's head was so spectacular and the carving so beautiful and detailed, and it actually is quite small. I really like birds a lot and love this one especially. This work, which depicts a black-rumped flameback woodpecker, I love saying that, has been exhibited at the British Museum and is widely published. It's attributed to the great Mughal master Mansoor, who's considered the most skilled and illustrious of the Indian painters of flora and fauna in the 16th century. You can see here, this also sold for $62,000. So these are highly valued works of art, in particular, the ones that come from the 16th and 17th century. Mansoor, whose first name was Ustad, was a 17th century Indian painter and a naturalist. He served as the Mughal court artist. During this period, he excelled at depicting plants and animals. And during the reign of the Mughal Emperor Jahangir, his masterpieces earned him the title of Unequaled of the Age. Although he was largely known for his natural history illustrations, he did portray people in some also. And actually, you can see this center one. This is a self-portrait, which is really special. The Mughal dynasty ruled from the 6th through the 18th century in India. So we're talking about a lot of time. This is 12 centuries. They are known for the ability of the rulers who, through 7 generations, maintained a record of unusual talent and for their administrative organization. A further distinction is the attempt of the Mughals, who were Muslims, to integrate Hindus and Muslims into a united Indian state. This art form of these miniature paintings flourished under their rule. And although miniatures in all their forms can be seen in cultures around the world, there are a few places like India where this art form is particularly ingrained. Miniature painting in India has been around for longer than paper has existed. Paper was introduced to India in the 12th century, but miniature paintings trace back to at least the 9th. They were painted on manuscripts made out of dried palm leaves and painted on cloth. The leaves used for these manuscripts came from 2 main types of palms, Palmyra and Talipot. And you can see here in the middle, I've put this picture of a Palmyra palm tree, so you can get a look at those long, skinny palm leaves. And here's one on the top. So here's the palm leaf. There it is dried. It would have been 1 strand of this. And that is what people would have wrote on, basically, and did illustrations. So here's a beautiful painting on one of those leaves. And on the right, what you're seeing is how a manuscript would have looked. So they would take these long leaves, punch holes in them, and basically attach them together with some kind of twine or rope. The images are heavily influenced by Indian literature, fables, epics, and religious texts. On the left, you're looking at Goduli, the Hour of Cow Dust from 1813. This shows Krishna, who's blue here, and his fellow cowherds bringing home the cows in the evening. And on the right, we see a painting from 1720 by an artist known as the Coda Master. Now, here we see Krishna and Radha. They're gazing into each other's eyes during a sunset walk, and their love is expressed by the multitude of birds, the flowering trees, the intertwining of their bodies and garments. This is a quintessential Indian idea that nature echoes human passion, and it's beautifully manifested in this work. The other big area of miniature painting is in Europe. Before the advent of photography, portrait miniatures were highly fashionable and sought-after objects. Portrait miniatures first appeared in European royal courts in the 16th century. By the 18th century, their popularity was widespread, with leading miniature painters establishing themselves among the wealthy elite in London, Bath, and Dublin. Miniatures were particularly sought after by soldiers and sailors who wanted to leave their loved ones with a likeness to cherish in their absence. Just try to imagine a life without photography. No pictures to document your birth, graduation from high school, or even your wedding day. In a time before photography, how did people record important milestones and treasured memories? Miniature portraits are handheld paintings, generally created with watercolor paint on thin sheets of ivory. These intimate images were carried or worn by both men and women as a means to keep loved ones close at heart, even when they were not physically present. And isn't this just really special and beautiful? On the bottom here, you're seeing a necklace that was given to a woman by her husband, showing their whole family, all of their children. So there he is and her with their youngest, and all the children make up the necklace. That's especially beautiful. Here's a really tender picture of a father and daughter, and then this beautiful pin on the right. But we also have to look at the emergence of baby houses in the 16th century if we're talking about miniatures. Now, unlike modern doll houses made as toys for children, baby houses were usually commissioned by the upper class. A baby house with its dolls and intricate furnishings had a monetary value equivalent to a full-size house of the same period. In addition to being objects of intrigue and symbols of status, baby houses were used to teach housekeepers and servants the duties associated with running a household. So we have a picture here of one of the most famous baby houses, and not a lot is known about Mrs. Walter Tate, who last owned this house. It was made in Dorset around 1760 and is said to be modeled on a typical 18th century Dorset house. It's quite complex, as you can see. It comes apart in several sections so that the owner, usually a lady, could take it on her travels. Now, in those days, people often went away for quite long periods of time, so she would definitely want to bring this with her. It was a treasure. This baby house was a pride and joy of the mistress of the house. She would take great pleasure in choosing wallpapers and furniture for it. Now, children did play with the house from time to time under supervision. Guests would frequently take small presents, such as little silver kettles or salt containers, for the baby house as a token of thanks for the hostess's hospitality. In Paris, there is a shop in which you can buy anything for your dollhouse. Pain-d'Épice is the oldest toy store in Paris. You can get furniture, lighting, crockery, Christmas decorations, tableware, houseplants, everything you can imagine. But they're all very, very small. This is a world within a world, and it reveals a realm of perfectly reduced objects. These miniature houses might look like toys, but they really are for us adults to be able to appreciate the craftsmanship. Did you have a dollhouse when you were a child or an adult? 2 years ago, the Small is Beautiful miniature exhibition traveling art show came to New York from London and Paris. This exhibition highlights contemporary works, pop culture, museum replicas, and original works of art. There were 180 works of art, with some pieces as small as a person's finger. In this miniature world, a shoelace, like the one you see in the puddle here, can be mistaken for a sea creature. Here we can see it up close. How fun is that? So I'm going to go back again so that you can see what the puddle looked like. Imagine approaching this museum, and there probably is a sign there, or people would be standing there looking, and perhaps you would think, what are they looking at? And why did someone leave their sneaker in a puddle? And then as you approached it and you saw this up close, how fun is that? The tiny little people in the bottle cap really looks like a sea serpent. Now, this is a carving by Cindy Chin. She is using a carpenter's pencil and carved this incredible train. There are several other artists working with pencils now. Here's another one I like. Dalton Getty has been making sculptures out of pencils for over 40 years. Dalton began learning how to handle tools at the young age of 6 when he was at school in Brazil. And he and other students would use a razor blade or a pocket knife to sharpen their pencils for drawing and writing. His mother was a seamstress, so when he was 8 years old, she taught him how to use a sewing needle to help him with simple projects like hemming and sewing buttons. At the age of 9, his parents gave him a set of metal tools for children, which he used to make his own boxes, toys, and go-karts. This is also the age when he began sculpting with knives, chisels, and a hammer. At first, he carved large objects, but then he decided to create the smallest possible carvings that he could see with his naked eye. One day, he picked up a pencil and started carving it. Look at this little shoe on the top. Dalton Getty's idea is to bring people's attention to small things. Most of the pencils he uses are found on the streets and sidewalks. He carves mostly with the sewing needle and a very sharp, triangular, small metal blade. He works at very small intervals, 1 to 2 hours maximum a day, whenever he gets inspired. He works very slowly, just removing specks of graphite at a time. It could take him months and sometimes years to complete one of these pencil sculptures. If we were in Los Angeles, we could even visit a national museum of toys and miniatures. They have some incredible treasures in their collection, like these dueling pistols. Apparently, the mechanisms are functional, although they have never been used in a miniature duel, thank goodness. Did any of you ever play the piano? Although sound cannot be miniaturized, the harpsichord you see here is fully functional and even comes with a tuning instrument. Yes, people have been interested in tiny things for a long, long time. Even people like my dad, who does model railroading. Here he is showing his great-grandchildren his trains. By the way, he is 92 years young now and still working on his trains. Some people create stories with miniatures. I thought this artist was pretty interesting. American sculptor Thomas Doyle has been famously crafting splendid isolated spaces and idyllic scenes which have been devastated by calamities and catastrophes. His scenes feature tiny human figures, immaculate green landscapes over the edge and buried houses and demolished estates. Oh my goodness, I'm glad this is not my house. We also have a German artist, Anja Markowitz, who's famous for creating tiny sculptures out of paper, only a few millimeters in size, miniature origami creations. of flowers and animals. Incredible. Here's a wonderful woman, St. Paul, Minnesota-based dog lover, Lucy Frances Maloney. She's found a clever way to help pet owners cope with the grief of losing a pet by crafting incredibly lifelike miniature replicas of their deceased dogs. The 61-year-old artist has created more than 15,000 handmade models of pooches. These miniatures are so chillingly lifelike, and she gets that effect by using old photographs and working with chicken wire, yarn, and an assortment of materials to mimic their coat. Sometimes real dog hair, camel hair, cashmere, and even alpaca hair. I love these pieces too, and check out the scale. So here you have a penny, which just gives you a sense of how tiny this is. This is an Israel-based artist named Shay Aaron who crafts drool-worthy miniature food platters that could make you all rumbly in the tumbly. His food platters look so amazingly stunning and lifelike that I get hungry every time I look at them. A few years ago, he was 308 pounds. He was overweight and depressed. He began creating miniaturized food sculptures at a tiny scale that look almost completely edible, and he used the hobby to help curb his appetite. I feel like I'm replacing my passion for greasy food with fake baked goods, he says. He has crafted beautifully handmade designs of eggs, vegetables, burgers, pasta, nachos, pies, and steaks, and pretty much any kind of food you could think of. Shay works mostly with polymer clay. He combines plastics, glass, and paper, wood and resin and more. He has a very popular business selling items of jewelry. I'll have to see if I have a dress that would look good with a pair of pizza earrings. This artist, Brooke Rothshank, grew up in Goshen, Indiana, surrounded by a Mennonite community that places a high value on work ethic and quality craft, such as quilting, woodworking, and ceramics. Brooke works primarily in miniature watercolor. Most of these paintings are smaller than 2.5 inches, and you can get a sense of the scale here compared to this paintbrush. So this painting of these two children, again, is about the size of your thumbnail. This child, really sweet. I've really enjoyed looking at some of these artworks with you today. Artists come in all shapes and sizes, and so does art. Thanks again to the professional, kind folks at Right at Home Boston North for giving us the chance to spend this time together looking at this wildly miniature art, and the knowledgeable, caring people at AgeSpan for helping us to bring this program to you. It's always fun spending time together, and I'm looking forward to October when we'll have another program. Until then, I wish you good health and enjoy the cooler evenings. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. It's time to say goodbye. Goodbye, my friends. I'll see you soon.